I am a Kenyan, born and brought up in Kenya. I studied botany and zoology to start with, and then I went on to do a master's degree in general tropical resource ecology, and then narrowed down to elephants, human-elephant interactions. So I've spent a lot of my life working in spaces where there are elephants, wild elephants, looking at the way they behave, what they eat, where they move to, how they interact in a changing landscape with lots of humans and more areas turning into cropland. So I have spent most of my career, one, studying elephants in the field. I've also spent a lot of time advocating for elephants because elephants need friends. So I've advocated for elephants, against putting them in zoos, cruelty against elephants, and generally poor welfare and treatment of elephants when they are moved into captivity. I've also spent time advocating against poaching, selling of ivory. And in my last job, I actually tried to bring the conversation about elephants to very high level so that it was being discussed at in the UN forums and the places where they can make big decisions. And then in my job now, I help people who want to do research on elephants to work here at MPALA. I'm the executive director of MPALA Research Center, and we welcome researchers from all over the world to come and study the natural environment. Some of them study elephants, some of them study ants and bees and birds and plants. So that's me. That's what I do. I went to Kenya Wildlife Service as a general ecologist, and then I happened to go into the elephant research program as an assistant researcher. And every time I went to the field and I spent time with the scientists, and all of them were women, studying elephants, I was amazed at, just everything, all the facts I learned about elephants, the way they look out for their young, the way they communicate. Sometimes we can't even hear below human hearing, but they communicate, the way they split into smaller groups when there is no food, and then they come back together into huge groups and have this wonderful meeting ceremonies. It was just so moving to understand and see elephants from the perspective of a scientist that it just became the thing that I wanted to do. So I started as an early career scientist working in Kenya Wildlife Service. I was introduced to elephants very well by Dr. Joyce Poole and Dr. Cynthia Moss in Amboseli. So I've had some amazing experiences because Amboseli National Park, where I did most of my studies, especially my PhD study, is the place where you find the longest studied wild elephants. And the park is very small. And the elephants kind of get to know the researchers. Not know them in terms of that we speak to each other or touch each other, no. But they hang around the research center quite a lot. And there was this female elephant called Echo. And Echo always kind of knew how to pass through the research center and say hello. And I can just remember the wonderful times when Echo would come by on a day you really needed her to pass by. Those who've written a long piece of work, like a PhD, they know there are days you just need something special to happen so that you can leave out that day and write something. So I remember one particular day when Echo just showed up in the morning, and I just knew everything was going to be all right. So, and I've had many beautiful times, seeing elephants with twins, which is a very rare phenomenon, but you're kind of almost the first one to see those kind of, it's amazing. So I've had a wonderful time studying elephants. I think my advice is to immerse yourself in the natural world and allow your curiosity to lead you because science is about being curious about the natural world. And so take every opportunity to be out in the field, interact with good scientists so that you can also know how to observe, how to interpret what it is that you're seeing. And careers in science will often take you to some isolated places. So learn how to be alone and enjoy being alone. But more so, a science career requires that you take interest in the foundation subjects when you're in school. So you do need to enjoy your biology. You need to enjoy, your math, kind of, and your chemistry. It's good if you pay attention to the science subjects early, because that will help you when you finally get into science as a career. But again, what is becoming very obvious for many of us scientists is that communicating what we know has not always been easy. So it's good as a scientist to also teach yourself how to speak, how to communicate, how to tell others what it is that you know. So pay attention to language because it helps you to communicate. I think the most important thing is be curious and immerse yourself in the natural world. In Kenya, the president gives state awards to citizens who've distinguished themselves in different areas, and these awards are usually given on Heroes Day. So it was wonderful to be recognized by government as a hero. And I think I would say it's really been many years in conservation doing work which was you could call jobs, but also putting myself out as somebody who volunteered or give my time and advisory work. One of my best places is the Karura Forest in Nairobi. This is a forest that's associated with Wangari Maathai, who was Kenya's first Nobel Peace Prize winner and also very well-known global conservationist. She fought hard to maintain this forest in the middle of Nairobi, and I've had the pleasure and the honor to work as the chairperson of the board for many years. I've also done a lot of grassroots work in southern Kenya with the Maasai community, who are guardians of wildlife naturally, but sometimes there are challenges that come about because wildlife is sometimes found in difficult areas, arid and semi-arid areas. Education can be a challenge, and so done a lot of work with mentorship and education, especially of girls. And so the award was basically just recognizing not just my role as a conservationist, as a professional, but also putting myself out to provide support, advisory services, volunteer work, which I think the government recognizes as going above and beyond in service. So I was very pleased to get the state honor for that. Actually, they don't just leave, they're chased away, The females will look at the young males as they are approaching the age of 12, 13. They're starting to get quite naughty. And often the females will, both the mother and her sisters, the matriarch and the younger daughters, will actively send the young males away from about the age of 12, 13. And then once they are sent away, they spend, mostly when they are very young, they will form smaller groups of males and spend time together. But as they grow older, so that to maximize their reproductive success, because a male needs to be really big and very well fed to be able to compete with other males so that they can mate as many females as possible, they tend to be alone so that they can eat a lot. It's easier to find a lot of food for yourself if you're all alone. So you find older males tend to be solitary, Younger and sub-adults tend to hang together, 2, 3. Sometimes it can be as many as 10, 11. And sometimes they actually come quite close to family groups. They stay not very far from family groups, but the families would have them leave by the time they're about 11, 12, 13. I think that is a Disney World story. But it's interesting to see elephants play with smaller mammals, even birds. Sometimes if you're in the field observing elephants, when they get close to, say, plover nests, the blacksmith plovers tend to lay their nests in the ground. And you'll see elephants actually being very cheeky. They pretend to step on the nest, and the plovers will make lots of noise. The blacksmith plovers are quite noisy. So elephants do play with younger, with other smaller animals. They are very full of humor. Yeah. Okay, there are a number of things in that question. It is true that elephants mourn or obviously show a recognition of loss. Of course, we use terms that are mostly related to humans, but I would say it's important to be cautious because these are animals and they are just expressing a recognition of loss. Often they will stay around the bodies of the babies for some time. Sometimes they actually carry them for periods. Now, I think it's important to also know that their next mating will be determined by when they go into estrus again. So it's a process of hormones that will make them ready for mating. So I think using terms that are very human, like elephants are waiting, these are natural cycles. They will go into estrus and then they will mate. They will be mated by the male. So I think sometimes we need to be careful when we are dealing with the animal world, that we don't impose too many kind of what would be human understanding of what they are doing. But it's true that they do show a real recognition of loss, which in human terms we could call mourning. In terms of when they mate, it's really when they cycle again. When they go into estrus, they will be mated. So it might be a kind of a wrong attribution to say that they are waiting. No, it's their bodies are getting ready for mating. When they are ready, the hormones they're in estrus, then they will be mated. And you can see the males testing whether the females are ready to receive, to mate. So it's very much a biological cycle that will get them ready. The elephant world is quite interesting. Sometimes for a researcher can be very testing because you can sit with a group of elephants for a long time and you hear nothing. It's a very silent kind of life. But what we discovered after many years of study in Amboseli is that there is certain communication that is below human hearing. We can't actually hear it. We use very special speakers or voice recorders to be able to get that sound. Some of them are rumbles that are below human hearing. We can't hear them. So that's one sound, it's a rumble. There are some rumbles that we can hear. And actually, we are able to relate those rumbles to certain behaviors. So you can relate, for instance, when a mating is happening, there are certain rumbles. You can almost relate that with joy. And then there's trumpeting. Elephants trumpet when they are alarmed. They also trumpet when they are very happy. Like when they are meeting together as bond groups, you can see a celebration that includes trumpeting and rumbling and those different types of sounds. So in short, we have trumpeting, we have rumbling, and some very low rumbles which we can't hear, but they are actually communicating, though it is very silent when you're around them as a human. Okay, so tasklessness for sure is a phenomenon that is recorded in the natural world. There's a lot more taskless elephants among the Asian elephant population. And you could say that elephants with tusks are obviously killed more for those tasks than elephants that do not have tusks. And so tasklessness could become preferred as an evolutionary trait, or become so high in the population that it starts to express itself more. There has not been I do not recall a straight study that relates that to a clear evolutionary trend. So I can't say for certain that that's what is going on. I could only say that, yes, of course, when there is very heavy poaching pressure, the elephants that are being killed first are the ones that with big, mature tusks, because the tusks are being taken out for commercial purposes. And so one would hazard a guess that, yes, the tusklessness would show up more. But in a known population, the Amboseli elephant population, we don't have a record like that. We don't have a record where tasklessness became expressed in the kind of numbers that you see there. So I would say it is a phenomenon that shows up, but we have not seen it as much in known elephant populations like the Amboseli elephants. There are different ways in which the world can be made aware. And one of them is the media. The media has been very positive and supportive of passing on the message that ivory, really only elephants should wear ivory. So there is a lot more awareness among people that all ivory that you see out there has been removed from a dead elephant. You can't take tusks off a living elephant and harvest them and then leave the elephant to go away. No. And elephants don't drop their tusks and then you can just pick them. If you have tusks, it's from dead elephants. So that kind of communication, the media has been very, very successful. And of course, education and awareness created in schools, the kind of work that organizations like MPALA Live are doing, just exposing people to the information and to show a lot of people what a wild elephant looks like and how important it is for us to conserve them. If elephants have a lifespan of 60, 70 years, to kill an elephant that has been around for maybe 40, 50 years, just to remove their tusks and use them to make decorations or, earrings or necklaces. It really is a very sad expression of human greed. And so I think the way to make people aware is just keep talking about it, and the media to educate and to take real effort to educate people around the world who maybe have not had an opportunity to see elephants, to really understand that ivory is removed from dead elephants. Different countries have different laws to discourage poaching. That is for the countries that have elephants. But also very important is that, remember, the elephant poaching is driven by the trade. So if nobody is buying, nobody is poaching. So also countries that don't have elephants but can provide a market for ivory also help the situation when they make good laws. For instance, now I would like to congratulate Canada, because Canada very recently has banned all sale of ivory and rhino horn. Now that helps, because if the buying stops, the killing stops too. Now, within countries where there are elephants, like in Kenya, the people who are found with ivory, you can go to jail for up to 20 years. You can pay very significant fines, up to $2 million. Now, of course, in every legal system, there are many challenges. It's not all the time that people are convicted effectively, but here in Kenya we have seen some serious commitment by the law enforcement agencies to actually take great interest in prosecuting people who break those laws and getting them to go to jail. So it is a great deterrent. Having good laws is good, but enforcing them is even better. So we applaud the Kenya government. It's been very, very successful, and actually the cases of poaching have become very low. But we also applaud governments in, like I said, the Canadian government, or even the governments in the UK. We are still waiting for the European Union to make more significant laws to ban the trade in ivory and rhino horn, because it's the buying that usually causes the killing. So when the buying stops, the killing will stop. Laws are made in the House of Parliament. The parliamentarians are elected by the people. And so it's very important to make sure that we elect people who are aware of the impact, for instance, of poaching or elephant or ivory trade. And if they don't know, it is our business as citizens to ensure that we inform and educate our legislators. We also must support those non-governmental organizations. A lot of them, often very small, but they make a lot of effort in advocacy for laws to be changed in different countries to make sure that they respond to what is important in terms of conservation. So, for instance, in Canada, I have worked for many years with many small organizations that have fought hard to make sure that elephants are removed from captivity. Laws about ivory trade, rhino horn trade are reviewed. So in the UK, there are many organizations that are also working on that. In America, and especially in America, the challenge is that there are federal laws and there are also state laws. Yes, and state laws are very important because they are the ones which determine what goes on in our backyards. So it's important for the ordinary citizen, whether you are a young person like Greta Thunberg or you're an old person, get interested in what your lawmakers are doing. Inform, educate them, protest if they're, and support those organizations that are doing the right thing, because there are many things for people to advocate about, but all laws are made by people who we elect. So let's be careful who we elect. Well, in one of my jobs, where I worked for a charity called Born Free Foundation, we used to carry out an exercise to remove snares. There is a form of hunting that is very, very destructive. Usually, poachers will go into a forest and then set up traps. And these traps will basically indiscriminate. So while the poacher might be just wanting to trap antelopes or the small dik-diks for food, an elephant can get caught in there and their trap will be removed. A lion could lose their paws. So we used to go out into the bush and actively remove these snares. And one day, when we were carrying out that exercise, we actually came right into a situation where the poachers were now busy preparing the animals that they had poached for transport. It was not a very happy interaction. In law enforcement, they call it a contact, where now the rangers will get involved in some shootout. And it's a scary moment, but later on, it is when you look at it as a conservationist, you realize first how dangerous conservation jobs are for the law enforcement people, for rangers, and for scientists. They can get quite dangerous, but also how much we need to educate ourselves about the dangers that wildlife have. Those wires look very innocent when they are in the bush, but when you get into a poacher's camp and you see hundreds of animals of different species, some of them, it makes you sad to realize that meat will actually end up being eaten by an unsuspecting person who would not normally consume that kind of meat, but because it will be disguised as beef or other legal meat, somebody could end up eating something they would not normally consume. So yes, I have been in those situations. They are not nice, but they do give you a very good view of how dangerous conservation can be. Thankfully, elephants are very versatile. They adapt very well to changing environments. They are mixed feeders, so they are able to eat greenery. They can also feed on very dry shrubs. They feed on roots. They feed on grasses. They are very broad in terms of what they can feed on. But they also need a lot of food. Yes? Mm-hmm. They also need to eat a lot. And so during prolonged, say, droughts, elephants tend to suffer a lot, especially the very old ones and the young ones, because it means they have to travel long distances to be able to find adequate food. They also have to travel long distances to be able to find adequate water resources. So just the sheer fatigue of the distances they have to go is a real problem for them. The other thing is that we are now in landscapes that are really human dominated. There's a lot more people carrying out activities like farming or settlements. So even what used to be traditional migration routes that elephants knew, if you travel this way, you're going to find a permanent water source somewhere. There's a lot of human settlements in between. And this poses a real danger for elephants, because if they raid crops, they stand the danger of being killed or just harassed. If they move through an area that is very settled, if they try and cross roads, railways. So the world is becoming a lot more dangerous for elephants. And as they try to adapt and cope with the changes caused by climate change, travel longer distances in routes to look for food, it becomes a very challenging, different world for them to navigate. Will elephants survive these changes? It very much depends on what humans do. It very much depends on what humans do. If humans make the necessary decisions to leave open corridors, migration corridors, so that elephants and other large mammals can move through from one refuge area to the next. If humans decide to leave adequate spaces for elephants, if humans restore landscapes that have been degraded for whatever reason and ensure that there is a chance of recovery, if humans can ensure that we are planting enough trees and not just cutting them down. So it's planning. We are the ones who are going to decide whether there will be elephants for our grandchildren to see, because it's us who are modifying landscapes. Elephants continue to have the same intelligence. They are very intelligent. They know exactly what to do in times of stress, but they can't do it if we keep interfering with their migration routes, if we keep transforming landscapes into places that are completely barren, if we fail to restore landscapes that are degraded. What can they do? Yeah. If elephants had their way, if they're the ones sitting in parliament, I'm sure some of the decisions they would make would be to conserve the natural world and leave spaces for humans and animals to share, but plan them well so that if an elephant needs to move from MPALA to Samburu, there is a clear way of getting there. And if a human needs to build a house, they can also be able to do the same. Coexistence, okay? I'm sure elephants would go to parliament and say, let's not be selfish, let us coexist. Let's plan our spaces in such a way that we all use those spaces without being greedy. Fortunately, elephants don't go to parliament, so it's you and me who will have to advocate for them. Now, the reason why people say that elephants destroy landscapes or turn them into desert is exactly because they tend to be confined in small spaces. Elephants are the gardeners of Eden. They know exactly when to move and leave the landscape to recover. They know that there are core areas that they depend on during dry seasons, and so when it rains, they move far. They go and eat far away so that they conserve or let those core areas recover. Like now, I'm sure you have noticed that in MPALA, 2 months ago, we had many elephants. Now, because we've received rains, they've moved. They are leaving MPALA to regenerate, to recover, because they know this is their refuge. This is where they come at the end of the dry season. Elephants know that. But now wherever they've gone, we don't know whether they are safe. And if they are not safe, they'll come back sooner than they normally would. Yeah? And then they will spend more time here in MPALA, and so they will start complaining, oh, they are turning MPALA into a desert. But if they were safe in those refuge areas where they've gone, they would stay there long enough to let MPALA recover. So when they come back, we all live happily. So the problem is elephants can't plan land use. They depend on us. But elephants are intelligent. Elephants are adaptable. They eat a lot for sure. They drink a lot of water. So and they have a big brain. And they never forget. They know exactly what strategies they use to survive the last drought and the last one. They know what to do in times of plenty. Elephants are just intelligent. Humans are intelligent, but unfortunately, their intelligence is crowded by individualism and greed. If we just worked together and chose coexistence. I think we cannot survive.